The story begins and we see a race of death that has no end. If the competitors are warned 3 times, they are shot without hesitation until there is only one winner left in the end. This movie is based on Stephen King's novel. In the near future, the country has fallen into a long economic crisis. People of the lower class are living in very difficult conditions. To give hope to the people, the government organizes such a competition every year that can change someone's fate. Each youngster is selected from 50 states, and the one who continues to walk to the end is called the winner. He gets a hefty prize money and a promise to fulfill any wish. The main character, Gary's life was fine compared to the rest of the people. Still, for some reason, despite his mother's opposition, he decided to take part in this competition. His mother came to bid him farewell. Her eyes were full of tears. She knew how heartless this race was. Perhaps this was the last meeting between mother and son. Gary suppressed the pain within him and met a black youngster at the checkpoint. His name was Peter. That man, full of pride, was full of self-confidence. When Gary reached the competition site, he saw that the other contestants were also present. Everyone was talking to each other as if they had no idea about the cruelty of this game. Only then did a jeep slowly enter the field. It had a colonel sitting in it, the organizer of this race of death. He looked at everyone with cold eyes, called out their names, distributed numbers, and gave a passionate speech. And then, in front of the eyes of the whole country, the race of death officially began. With the sound of a bullet, all the contestants started moving forward slowly. They already knew all the rules of this game. The band tied around their wrists was dictating their movement. Each contestant had to keep a speed of at least 3 miles per hour. As soon as anyone went below this mark, he would get a warning. As soon as all 3 warnings were fulfilled, death was inevitable. If anyone crossed the road, he would be thrown out without any warning. This road did not lead to any destination. There was no end to it. It would go on until only one person was left alive. Cars and judges were working on both sides of the road. The race had just begun and all the contestants were in full strength. There was a smile on their faces. They were even talking to each other. One contestant was wearing a cap. His name was Ben. He had received a warning once, but he did not seem to be worried at all. According to the rules, if anyone kept walking for an hour without making a mistake, his last warning would automatically be canceled. In the meantime, a stone got stuck in the shoes of contestant number 5. He bent down and opened the soles of his shoes. Suddenly, he heard a sound like a cold machine. Warning! And he got a warning twice in a row. The reason was clear. He had not kept a steady pace for more than 10 seconds. This also made it clear that no one could take a warning and rest on the ground. Gary and Peter were walking in the front row. Both joined in the conversation about why they finally joined this race. Most of the people were from poor families. For them, this race was just a way to get rich. But Gary had a different opinion. He felt that money is not everything. According to him, such competitions are completely useless. Even if no one forced anyone to participate in it, boys from all over the country wanted to participate in it. But only 50 fortunate people were chosen, and one of them was Gary. Everyone was talking about how a boy who was wearing glasses also joined them. His biggest dream was to write a book on this death walk with the help of a talented person. Suddenly, he heard a sound like a cold machine. He found out that the player number 7 had a cramp in his leg. He was trying his best to keep his pace, but still he kept getting warnings. When Gary saw this, he went to him and cheered him up. Number 7 tried to wipe his tears for a few minutes, but in the end, number 7 couldn't bear the pain and fell on the ground. At that moment, the 3rd warning bell rang, and then a sound of a bullet was heard. Another talented person got out of this game in life. The atmosphere changed in a moment. Where there was laughter and talk till now, there was only silence. No one smiled. The sun's rays were heating the ground. Gary reached the supply truck and took a big sip of water. This was the government's one and only resource. He had to bring the rest of the food along with him, because Gary was the representative. A small fangirl was holding a board and cheering him up. Peter walked up to him and smiled. Who says you can't be friends in a competition? That girl's innocence and passion touched everyone around her. But the player number 5 got irritated. He taunted him. They were having a fight. Suddenly, another player fell down. Number 5 looked at him, and he jumped over his fallen body. Another bullet was fired. That player was now just a number. Number 5 smiled and said, "Now our chances of winning have increased." Gary and Peter's eyes were filled with anger. Their hands were tied, but somehow they kept themselves under control. Because here, a wrong step was death's invitation. Suddenly, a small boy slipped while walking. He almost fell down. Gary grabbed him. He advised him to walk a little slower, just enough to keep the speed at the minimum limit. After all, this race is not about who runs the fastest. At the same time, number 5 started talking nonsense again. When he heard that number 19 is the rank, he started making fun of his mother, who gave him this name. The rank got very angry. He tried to punch him, but his foot slipped and he fell on the ground badly. The wound was so deep that he could not get up. And the alarms went off, one by one. With the third alarm, another bullet was fired. Number 5's low behavior made everyone angry. He started giving excuses. First, he attacked me, but no one believed him. Everyone stepped back a few steps, as if the air around him had also become dirty. After a while, a strange smell spread in the air. The boy who was wearing glasses came in a hurry and said, "I think no one could stop him," and in fact, his suspicion was right. Moving forward, number 45 was unable to stop himself due to a stomach upset. Everyone's eyes turned towards him. He sat on the road. In a few seconds, the third alarm went off, and then the sound of a cold, emotionless bullet. Another name was erased from the list. Now everyone understood a truth. If you want to stay alive in this race, you will have to fulfill all your needs while walking. You were not allowed to stop. When the distance of the race reached 35 miles, the Jeep's loudspeaker sounded. There are very few opportunities in life to get up straight. Now whatever's going on, cherish it. Gradually, the darkness spread. Night fell in the sky. Tiredness and sleep began to dominate everyone. Gary remembered that he had seen the record of the last year's race. In the first night, most people get out. The reason was clear. When tiredness increases to the limit, the body itself becomes weak, and this mistake becomes death. Every now and then, a cold, emotionless alarm was heard from behind, and then the sound of bullets echoed one by one. People were falling. Now Gary himself had received the warning twice. What was going on ahead? The same number 5 was again unable to stop taunting. Gary's breath was getting heavy. His feet were shaking. He was about to break. Then Peter came running from behind. He held his hand and said, "Sprinkle a little water. Keep your mind cool." Gary poured water on his face and somehow crossed the night with Peter's continuous courage. When he crossed that difficult night, it felt as if sleep had also flown somewhere. The body was still tired, but awareness returned to the mind. Gary looked at Peter with grateful eyes. Both smiled. At that moment, they forgot that they were actually rivals. Including the deaths of last night, only 18 people were left in the field. One more day, one more night, by walking continuously, the lines of fatigue on everyone's faces had become deep. Then the same alarm was heard from behind. The boy wearing glasses, who had dreamed of writing a book, had lost his mind. He had received the warning twice. Gary and Peter looked at each other and then deliberately turned their eyes. They already knew what was going to happen next. That boy fell on his knees in tears, and in a few moments, another bullet's echo spread in the air. Another dream was over there. Gary said with a smile, "Is this a rule or a torture?" But the number 5 said again, "Weak people don't last long anyway." Peter, keeping his anger under control, put his hand on Gary's shoulder. "Don't pay attention to this scoundrel. Save your strength. The journey is still far away." That's when the colonel's voice echoed from the loudspeaker. "Congratulations, you have completed 100 miles. But at the same time, a player suddenly broke down. He increased his speed, screaming, and started running towards a store on the side of the road. Maybe he just needed a few moments of rest. But before he could reach the door, a bullet dropped him. The atmosphere was filled with despair and anger. Everyone had only one question in their eyes. Is this the competition of humans? That's when Gary suddenly made a cold joke. He knew that the joke wasn't meant to be funny. It was just a failed attempt to lighten the pain in his heart. But in the end, some people's patience was broken. An Indian young man came first. He raised his voice against the colonel's anger. Humiliation and years of hatred were reflected in his words. His opposition lit a fire in the hearts of others as well. Soon everyone started shouting in unison, No one cared about the rules or warnings anymore. At that moment, everyone forgot that they were competitors. Instead of enmity, a shared anger took over. Their hatred for power united everyone. That same night, the weather also changed and heavy rain started. Cold drops fell on the body as if lightning struck. But the strange thing was that the death toll was the lowest that night. Maybe because the rain washed away the fatigue and gave everyone some relief. On the morning of the third day, the fatigue returned as soon as the darkness left. At that moment, Gary and Peter's black friend Arthur couldn't stop himself. He took off his pants on the side of the road and relieved himself. But his timing was perfect. Before the third warning came, he finished everything. Gary and Peter looked at each other, smiled and raised their thumbs and praised his skill. Arthur went ahead to breathe in the fresh air. That's when Gary said to Peter in a low voice, "Do you know why I actually came to this race of death?" He took a deep breath and said, "I have admired my father since childhood. He was a man who believed in freedom. He never stopped me from touching anything, whether it was banned books or banned music. For him, the freedom of the soul was the greatest thing." Then one night, an army force raided our house. The colonel himself came. He said to my father, "You are accused of spreading banned thoughts. If you do not swear loyalty to the country and the system here and now, you will be shot." But my father did not think for a moment. He chose a different path. Death. Gary's eyes were wet. I had seen it all with my own eyes. Since then, I have been thinking only one thing. I should win this race so that I get a chance to reach in front of that colonel. And then his fist tightened. He had to face his own death. Peter remained silent for a while and said, "Gary, revenge cannot be the purpose of life. Think about your mother, your friends. If you become the same person whom you hate, then what difference will it make?" Gary did not say anything. He just kept moving forward on the wet road in the rain. The journey had now reached 170 miles. At that time, a talented player's leg was badly injured. He called out for help from the soldiers of the tank, but all he got was a cold shot. The bullet passed through his body and then the iron tracks of the tank crushed both his legs. But the soldiers did not kill him immediately. They just stood silent as if programming had taken the place of humanity in a machine just waiting for the third warning. A white young man walking behind was shocked to see all this. In fear, he took off his clothes and ran toward the roadside. In a few seconds, the bullets fired and his body was covered in dust. When night fell again, only 7 out of 50 people were left. One of them was an Asian young man who was completely broken. He ran straight to the soldiers' car as if saying, "Just kill me." But there was no emotion on the soldiers' faces. They waited for 30 seconds for the third warning to be over. Then Arthur, that black friend, went crazy after seeing all this. He turned back to pick up the fallen boy. That's when 2 warnings flashed on his wristband. If Gary hadn't grabbed him and pulled him back forcefully, he would have died there. He had tears in his eyes, but now those tears had turned into fire. Sadness did not break them, but made them stronger. The 3 continued to walk with each other's support. On the other hand, the number 5 who used to fight the most was now quiet. He had no tiredness in his eyes, but a desire. He slowly went to Gary and said, "You know, I have been alone since childhood. Everyone hated me. That's why I also started biting and taunting. Maybe this became my shield." His voice was trembling. "I don't know why, but now when I see you, I feel like I can also be a part of someone. Will you keep me with you?" Just for a while, Gary kept quiet and looked at him. Then he smiled helplessly. "Let's see." But something in number 5 was broken. He took a few steps forward, then suddenly turned and stabbed his neck. He was bleeding profusely. Death had become so common that everyone kept walking as if nothing had happened. On the morning of the 5th day, there was a slight redness in the sky. Gary looked far and his heart beat for a moment. That place was his small town where he used to live with his mother. For a moment, he smiled, but the next moment, his face turned pale. His shoes were torn. Now he had to walk barefoot. At that moment, a familiar shadow was seen on the roadside. It was his mother. She was standing there trembling. As soon as she saw her son walking barefoot, she burst into tears. Gary's heart broke. He knew that this was his last meeting. He couldn't stop himself. He ran straight to the roadside to reach his mother. But at that moment, a red light flashed twice on his wristband. The third was about to come. Peter grabbed him from behind and forced him back on the road. Gary was shivering. Tears were flowing from his eyes. "I shouldn't have come to this horrible game," he muttered. Peter held his shoulder. "Now that you have reached here, just win it. Take the reward. Hug your mother again. Everything will be fine." The road got longer. Soon the 300-mile mark was crossed. Now only 5 players were left. The tall Ben started shivering. He was out of breath. And Arthur, Gary's black friend, started bleeding from his nose. For no reason. The Indian young man walking in front was completely silent. He was always ahead of everyone. But now his pace was getting faster. Gary called out, "Walk slowly." But the next moment, he saw that the young man was running toward the soldier's car. He snatched the weapon from a soldier's hand and shouted, "Not anymore! Free us all!" Next moment, a bullet pierced his stomach. He bowed but smiled. Maybe he was not waiting for any mercy. He himself pressed the trigger with his own finger. The night fell. The sky turned dark again. Raindrops were falling like blood. Arthur could not walk anymore. His body was shivering. He was out of breath. Gary and Peter held him from both sides. Step by step, the 3 of them moved forward in the darkness. Arthur was grateful. He said, "If I have such friends in the last moments of my life, then maybe I have won even after losing." Gary and Peter held him tight, but Arthur managed to free himself. And without any fear, with a calm face, he moved towards death. A few seconds later, the same cold bullet sound, and then silence. Now there were only 4 people left in the field. When the distance reached 350 miles, even the tall Ben started to tremble. He took a deep breath and said, "I have to tell you both something." Gary and Peter looked at him. "I am actually the colonel's illegitimate son." Gary and Peter were stunned. Ben said, "I came into this game so that he can accept me and my mother. I thought if I won, then maybe he will accept us. But now I understood the blood in his veins is also flowing in my veins, and I am ashamed of it." The sound echoed and Ben fell to the ground. Peter's face turned pale. He was out of breath. His legs were shaking. The sky started to rain again, a strong, cold rain. And now there was a crowd of people on both sides of the road to watch this final. Suddenly, Peter stopped. "Now, Gary, you go ahead. This race is only for a winner. I want you to be the winner. Your mother is still waiting for you." Tears flowed in Gary's eyes. "No, we will walk together." The red warning light twice shone on his wrist. Gary got up, but he did not care. He bent down with all his strength and picked up Peter again. Peter shook his head with a heavy heart. "Okay, I will walk with you till the last step." But then, there was an explosion. Peter turned. Gary was standing there, and the 3rd red light was shining. Gary smiled and said, "Now the victory is yours, friend." Then his eyes slowly closed. The sound of the bullet was lost in the rain. Peter, the only unwilling winner, had won the race. But his tears were not stopping. There was a cry of joy in the crowd, and he came to the middle of the field. According to the rule, the winner had the right to fulfill only one wish. Peter looked at the dead Gary. His eyes were red. His breath was heavy. Gradually, he began to speak his wish. "I want that top out. I want the soldier to come to me." The weapon stopped, but Peter captured it. He aimed directly at the colonel, and without any hesitation, he pressed the trigger. That moment was such that only the strength of friendship and loyalty was visible. To fulfill his friend's last wish, Peter challenged the riches, the prize, and perhaps the whole world. This is where the story of Death Walk ends. This film may have been made in a dystopian setting, but it did not pay much attention to the dark side of human nature. Instead, the spark of love, friendship, and opposition was ignited. Perhaps this is the reason that it is Stephen King's initial work. In comparison to later works, its style is different and simply impressive. That's all for today. If your thoughts are different, do tell us in the comments. See you with the next recap. Thanks for watching.